Hi everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background and I'm the author of the books Truth and Empathy, How to Find Your Soulmate, as well as Theta-Waves Meditation. And I'll put links to my books below. Also, if you're interested in determining your personality type, I do live assessments. 30 minutes would cost $100 and 60 minutes an hour, $135 Canadian. And I'm going to put below a link so you can contact me if you're interested in determining your brain type. So let's go back to the topic at hand. How do you determine your level of mental health? So how healthy your brain is. And over the years, I have read books and I've tested some clients, and I've realized that there are degrees of people, let's say, having mental illnesses and degrees of mental health. And I've determined about 6 levels, and it's based on the person's dominant brain waves, and that is related to their resting breathing at a 1-to-1 ratio. And I have some notes on screen so I don't miss anything. So first, I would like to just explain my sources, because some people might wonder, like, how did I be able to create these different levels and determining how they present themselves in day-to-day life. So first is the late psychiatrist and spiritual teacher David R. Hawkins. He wrote the book Power vs. Force and the Eye of the I. And the other source is Harvard psychiatrist Christopher Palmer. He wrote the book Brain Energy. Biological anthropologist Dr. Helen Fisher, also her book Why Him, Why Her was really a good source, because actually she has created also different personality type categories, so that actually helped quite a bit. Another really good source of information is the book Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Amen. He has scanned more than 100,000 brains. He has noticed that there are 16 types, just like MBTI types, and he has seen a pattern also in terms of who has a healthy brain versus people who are struggling with a mental illness. What I discovered over time is that a person's dominant brain waves will determine their personality type and their resting breathing rate at the 1-to-1 ratio. As the brain waves speed up, what happens is that their resting breathing follows suit. And some people probably have heard of Dr. Mike Mew, who's an orthodontist from the UK, and he has seen that people, when they breathe too fast, their tongue doesn't rest on the roof of their mouths, so their upper jaw becomes not well developed, and people don't have space in their mouth for 32 straight teeth. And that's really interesting, because with that understanding, you can determine if a person is a sensor versus an intuitive. Sensors naturally have faster brain waves, and if they're put in a situation where they are chronically stressed, their resting brain speeds up and they end up having crooked teeth because the tongue doesn't rest on the roof of their mouths. And by contrast, intuitives naturally have slower brain waves, so they're less likely to hyperventilate through the mouth and have crooked teeth. So their brain wave dominance is either alpha, slow alpha, or even theta in the case of the INFJ. So if, let's say, we take these concepts and actually look at the different levels of mental health, is that, for example, if you meet a person whose dominant brain wave is 24 cycles per second, they are in a category of people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD, and these people also often have addiction. So addiction is really like an extreme version of a mental illness. So these people will have crooked teeth because obviously they breathe through their mouth most of the time, and what happens is that they probably will use substances, usually hard drugs, to actually calm themselves down. So in other words, they're using these drugs, these substances, so that they can be able to manage the intense negative emotions that they experience. Because when, let's say, a person doesn't breathe properly, the first organ to be affected is the brain, because the brain is the most metabolically active organ in the body. So when that happens, chronic hypoxia, and especially when the person breathes 24 times a minute, it means that the brain is severely in need of oxygen, and that will result in a person having strong addictions. And if, let's say, you were in the vicinity of someone like that, they will probably have a negative effect on your life, so they can't even function in day-to-day life, and they don't really are capable of maintaining any even casual healthy relationships. They will probably be have behaviors that are very damaged to people around them. But the other category are people who breathe between 16 and 23 breaths per minute. So these people also suffer from a mental illness, but they're rather functional, and probably they will need to smoke, let's say marijuana or cigarettes. They might also need to drink alcohol. They don't necessarily need to go to the extreme of illegal drugs. But again, if, let's say, you were to be in a close romantic relationship with them or close friendship, they will cause issues because they are able to maybe maintain an appearance of being normal, but behind closed doors, there could be quite a bit of issues. So these people again also will have crooked teeth. Not to the degree of people who are at the level of post-traumatic stress disorder, because the other aspect that people who breathe 24 times or faster, they tend to have heavy breathing. Between 16 and 23, you don't hear them as much, but again, there is going to be an issue with mental health because of the fact that the brain is not receiving enough oxygen. So they are functional, but they probably will use some kind of substance to medicate themselves. The third group, which is between 12 and 15 breaths per minute, would be considered more in the healthy range. So they don't have necessarily issues with mental illness, especially if you hit between 12 breaths per minute. So there's enough oxygen going to the brain, and they probably will have space for 32 straight teeth, because even if they're stressed, they don't need to breathe through the mouth. Because what I've noticed is that anyone who breathes more than 16 times per minute will have a mental illness. So if you breathe less than that on a regular basis, you should be fine. So this group would still be in the category of sensors, but they are healthy sensors. So if you see someone who breathes 12 times per minute, most likely their tongue is rests on the roof of their mouth and they have space for 32 straight teeth. So the first three groups are really sensors. Now, there could be some intuitives who, if they're very stressed, they could land in that group. But what you'll notice is that if you look at the world in general, about 85% of our population are sensors, and they fall into these three first categories. Now, the fourth group are intuitives, and they breathe between 11 and 7 times per minute. It's rare that this group will end up with mental illness, and when you look at their jaw, it will be well developed. So even if they're chronically stressed, it's rare that they get to a point where they're breathing more than 16 times per minute. In this particular group is that you'll see that their brainwave dominance is alpha, so it's easy for them to even meditate. So if they're stressed, compared to sensors who tend to struggle with this practice, and this practice actually helps slow down the brainwaves. And the fifth group are people who breathe 6 times per minute at rest. So these people are very much protected from having a mental illness. And interesting enough, if a person is right brain dominant, they're even more protected than a person who is left brain dominant, for example, like an INTJ. So in other words, an ENFJ, really, if they have a normal life, there's no extreme stress, they should not worry about ever developing a mental illness or even having a lot of issues with addiction or so forth, because they're so far away from breathing 16 times or 24 times per minute. The sixth and last category are people whose brainwave dominance is between 5 and 3 cycles per second. In other words, that translates to a resting brain of between 5 and 3 breaths per minute, and these are light breaths through the nose. So at that level, obviously the person is very well oxygenated. Their risk of having ever some type of mental disorder is pretty much nil, and that obviously is extremely rare. We're talking about the INFJs, and obviously in history we're talking about people like Buddha, Jesus Christ, Mother Teresa, and so forth. So at that level, the person is a universal healer. They actually can heal others who have mental illnesses. Vast majority of people deal with some type of mental disorder. The issue is that most people's brain waves are too fast, and that impacts their resting breathing rate. And you can actually see that in terms of their facial development, in terms of how their jaws are not big enough to accommodate their teeth, because their tongue doesn't rest on the roof of their mouth, and the tongue shapes the upper jaw. And I think that people should really look into the work by Dr. Mike New, because he really explores that. And that's what I've seen over time. I think that it's very important that people know their level of mental health, because you can determine what needs to be done so that you can maximize your overall well-being. And one of the best ways to actually correct your dominant brainwaves so they're optimal is through meditation. So I'm going to put below a link to my 7-day free trial of my meditation videos so that you can test that they work to correct your dominant brainwaves, which will actually help you reach your optimal resting breathing rate. And you'll see how you can improve your sense of well-being and basically improve your mental health through meditation. Each person, depending on their brain type, will fall within those 6 categories. And you want to be as close as possible to what is optimal for you. So not everyone's going to be at the level of the INFJ or the intuitive. Actually, most people are sensors, but you want to be a healthy sensor. So let me know what you think about the content of this video by commenting below. If you like this video, if you learned something, please click on the like button. Also remember to click on the notification bell to be notified of other videos I'm going to be making. Subscribe to my channel, and we will talk soon.